Sam Elliott spent nearly 6 decades answering a doubt his father never lived long enough to see disappear. Before Hollywood knew that voice, Henry Elliott warned that acting offered almost no chance of building a secure life. Then he was gone, years before the films, the honors, and the unmistakable presence that would make his son known around the world. Sam proved the prediction wrong, but success came too late for father and son to revisit that warning together. Now, at 81, the body that once made strength look effortless reminds him that even endurance has a price. While portraying an aging father in Landman, Sam admitted that the character's physical frailty felt very close to his own reality. The world still sees a legend standing tall, yet beneath that strength remains a question no award could quiet. What happens when a son builds the very career his father once believed was nearly impossible? After that father is no longer there to see it. Before we begin, honor Sam Elliott with a like, a tribute to the man who turned one painful doubt into nearly 6 decades of unforgettable work. That unfinished conversation began in Sacramento, inside a family where work was measured in invisible results and uncertain dreams were treated with suspicion. Samuel Pack Elliott was born on August 9, 1944, into a household shaped by discipline, physical effort, and practical expectations. His mother, Glenn Mamie Sparks Elliott, had been a Texas diving champion before becoming a physical training instructor and teacher. His father, Henry Nelson Elliott, worked in predator and rodent control for the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, spending long days in a profession where effort produced results that could be seen and measured. Both parents came from El Paso, and Sam later said he believed a great-great-grandfather had served as a surgeon at the Battle of San Jacinto. Toughness was already woven into the family story. But Henry did not romanticize uncertainty. He believed a man should choose work capable of supporting a life. Acting offered no such guarantee. Sam remembered him as a good, practical man. That practicality gave his son a powerful work ethic, but it also created the disagreement neither of them would live long enough to resolve. Cinema gave the boy a language for an ambition he could not yet explain. Sam remembered Sacramento as an idyllic place of bicycles, the river, and Saturday matinees with his sister, Glenda. Inside those theaters, he discovered what a performance could do to a room full of strangers, and he wanted to create that feeling himself. When the family moved to Portland, Oregon, when he was 13, the ambition moved with him. He graduated from David Douglas High School in 1962, then studied English and psychology at the University of Oregon for 2 terms before leaving. The academic path failed to hold him, while church and school choruses helped reveal the deepening voice that would later become one of his most recognizable gifts. At Clark College, he completed a 2-year program and played Big Jewel in Guys and Dolls. A local review encouraged him to pursue acting professionally. For Sam, it was his first outside confirmation that the dream might possess substance. His father's warning, however, still hung over the choice. You haven't got a snowball's chance in hell in Hollywood. His father's death made that disagreement permanent. Sam returned to the University of Oregon, still divided between the secure future Henry trusted and the profession he could not abandon. Then, in 1966, Henry died from a heart attack before Sam had established a professional career. He had seen only 1 or 2 of his son's plays, brief glimpses of a beginning that offered no proof of where it might lead. He never witnessed the career that followed. There would be no conversation after the first breakthrough role, no quiet moment when father and son could reconsider the warning together. No award could replace that missing presence, and no applause could travel backward to 1966. Years later, Sam said, "I think he'd be proud that his kid became the actor I did." The tenderness of that belief reveals the unfinished space between them. The pride could only be imagined because it could never be spoken. Sam never received a final answer from his father about the path he had chosen. What he did inherit was Henry's discipline. With their disagreement left unresolved, that work ethic became the part of his father he could still carry forward. In Los Angeles, it would be tested not beneath a spotlight, but beside wet concrete. concrete gave Sam something Hollywood would not: proof that a day's labor had produced a visible result. After moving to Los Angeles, he studied acting, served in the California Air National Guard, and supported himself through construction. He poured concrete, stripped forms, pulled nails, stacked plywood, and returned the next day to do it again. The work was hard, but it obeyed clear rules. A wall stood or it did not. A surface held or it cracked. Acting offered no such certainty. An audition could be prepared for carefully and still lead nowhere. Months of effort could disappear without explanation. Yet the job that kept him outside the industry unexpectedly brought him closer to it. A family friend needed a barrier built from concrete and steel to control runoff near his home. Sam completed the work, and the friend, an assistant director, invited him onto a film set because he knew the young laborer wanted to act. Sam later compressed the turning point into 4 dry words: "My big break, pouring cement." The line was funny because the truth beneath it was severe. Hollywood did not open a door for him. Manual labor put him close enough to see one. Invisibility followed him through that opening. In 1969, Sam appeared in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid as card player number 2, a credit so small it almost described his position in the business. He later called himself a shadow on the wall, a glorified extra whose single line was heard off camera. Catherine Ross, whom he would eventually marry, was one of the film's stars, but Sam did not approach her. At that point, he was not part of her world on the production. What he possessed was not status but access. He watched Paul Newman and Robert Redford work, studied the atmosphere around cinematographer Conrad Hall, and learned how experienced professionals carried themselves when the camera was ready. The role did not make the audience remember him. It taught him what serious screen work demanded. Television brought more fragments. Judd for the defense, Lancer, Gunsmoke, and other appearances brief enough to be missed by anyone who looked away. He was building a resume one nearly anonymous credit at a time, without knowing whether those credits formed a road or merely a record of waiting. Recognition arrived so slowly that patience became part of the performance. Sam was not protected by an early breakthrough, and the industry did not immediately understand the face, the restraint, or the voice that would later become unmistakable. He survived by being prepared, punctual, observant, and willing to treat a minor assignment as real work. Those years did more than delay fame. They taught him how to continue when fame gave no sign that it was coming. By the time larger roles arrived, Sam had already been shaped by classrooms, community stages, military service, construction sites, and the edges of frames where almost no one noticed him. The credits were still small, but the habits behind them were becoming permanent. Hollywood eventually learned his name. The harder achievement came first. He learned to keep working while it did not. By 1972, the Falstaff beer commercials placed Sam before a national audience as Walker, a quiet cowboy years before the mustache and deep voice became cultural shorthand. Commercial exposure, however, was not the same as a secure career. In 1974, he played Evel Knievel in a television pilot built around a contest with a female motorcycle daredevil. The pilot aired, but the project was not picked up as a series. It was another opportunity that appeared long enough to suggest a future, then ended before that future could take shape. A more demanding role arrived in 1975 with I Will Fight No More Forever. As Captain Charles Wood, Elliott entered the tragic history of Chief Joseph and the Nez Perce, playing a military officer caught between duty and conscience. The performance required moral conflict without theatrical display, allowing the restraint that had once made him easy to overlook to become part of the work itself. A year later, Lifeguard gave him his first major contemporary leading role as Rick Carlson, a man forced to question whether the life that once defined him could still carry him forward. That same year, the NBC miniseries, Once an Eagle, gave him the central role of Sam Damon, an Army officer whose life and service unfolded across decades of war. Together, the two performances showed that Elliott could carry both intimate uncertainty and large-scale responsibility without abandoning the stillness that defined him. Yet even two substantial roles in the same year could not turn momentum into security. The work had grown larger. The certainty surrounding his future had not. Reviews of Lifeguard were divided, and Variety described Rick Carlson as mostly a passive reactor. For an actor whose power often came through restraint, stillness could still be mistaken for absence. Sam continued anyway. Projects stalled. Promising roles did not always lead to better ones. Commercials sometimes reached a wider audience than performances, into which he had poured more of himself. The cowboy image brought employment, but it also threatened to become a boundary around everything casting directors believed he could do. "My security comes from the fact that I've never done a job for money," he later said. The words did not mean survival was unimportant. Construction had already taught him otherwise. They meant the work still had to be worth protecting, when fame offered no evidence that it was coming. The 1970s, Sam no sudden coronation. They gave him patience, weight, and an inner life that later roles would require. By the end of the decade, the question was no longer whether he could endure being overlooked. It was whether the industry would ever recognize what those years had created. Hollywood could overlook Sam Elliott for only so long. In 1985, Mask revealed the tenderness beneath his rugged image through Gar, the compassionate biker who brought steadiness to the lives of Rusty Dennis and her son, Rocky. By 1993, at 49, the nameless figure once left at the edge of another man's frame had become the kind of presence a scene could lean on. In Gettysburg, he stepped into the role of Brigadier General John Buford, a soldier who sees disaster approaching before the battle has fully begun. Elliott played foresight as burden rather than spectacle. Tombstone followed that same year, placing him beside Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer as Virgil Earp, a man whose steadiness mattered because chaos surrounded him. Neither role depended on speeches announcing greatness. His face, posture, and measured delivery gave consequence to men who understood that duty could cost more than it promised. After decades near the edge of the frame, Sam had become the presence that made the frame feel anchored. The Big Lebowski arrived in 1998 and transformed an old limitation into something unforgettable. Elliott appeared briefly as the stranger, a cowboy narrator inside a world of bowling alleys, confusion, and absurdity. The Coen brothers had written the character as sounding not unlike Sam Elliott, turning the Western box that once restricted him into a role that recognized exactly who he was. We Were Soldiers followed in 2002, with Elliott as Sergeant Major Basil Plumley, carrying battlefield authority without romanticizing its cost. In Hulk in 2003, he gave General Thaddeus Ross a severity that brought human tension to spectacle. These were supporting roles, but supporting no longer meant disposable. Then the hero placed age itself at the center of the story. As Lee Hayden, an aging Western actor confronting illness, estrangement, regret, and the fear that one remembered performance might become all that remained, Sam faced a role uncomfortably close to the public image he had spent decades carrying. The identity that once threatened to restrict him had accumulated enough history to hold an entire film. A Star is Born brought the deepest recognition of all. As Bobby Maine, the older brother carrying years of anger, loyalty, and love beside Bradley Cooper's collapsing musician, Sam gave one of his most powerful performances through restraint. In the driveway scene, Bobby hears that he, not their famous father, was the brother his younger sibling idolized. Sam says almost nothing. He backs the truck away, and the emotion reaches his face only after words have failed. The role earned him his first Academy Award nomination at 74, nearly 50 years after Butch Cassidy. Asked what first came to mind after receiving the nomination, Elliott joked that it might be, "It's about time." He later called the nomination an award of attrition. When he finally watched the completed film, he admitted, "I wept through half the thing." Decades earlier, Sam had worked construction on a wing of the Beverly Hilton, while limousines delivered famous actors below. He hauled materials several floors above a world he wanted, but had not yet entered. More than 40 years later, he returned to that hotel during awards season. "Every time I've gone back since, I recall that moment," he said. The wing is still standing. So was he. What had begun with wet concrete and nearly invisible credits had become a body of work the industry could no longer overlook. By the time Hollywood finally looked up, Sam Elliott had already built something it could not erase. Catherine Ross entered Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid as a star. Sam Elliott entered it as a man so anonymous that he would later describe himself as a shadow on the wall, a glorified extra. In 1969, she was already celebrated for The Graduate and stood at the center of the production. He was card player number 2, nearly invisible at the edge of a bar scene. Sam admitted that he had not dared to approach the leading lady. Catherine was involved with the film cinematographer, while he was still collecting parts too small to promise a future. Nothing romantic began between them, and Sam never claimed otherwise. What remained was the extraordinary distance between two people working on the same film while living in different worlds. She was recognized wherever she went. He was still struggling to become recognizable at all. Their first crossing offered no hidden courtship, no grand declaration, and no certainty that their paths would meet again. There was only a woman at the center of a Hollywood classic, a man barely visible near its edge, and a future neither could yet see. Time narrowed that distance in 1978, when the legacy brought them together again, not as a star and an unnamed background player, but as two actors finally able to know one another on more equal ground. A decade earlier, Sam had barely existed at the edge of Catherine's world. Now they could finally meet as equals. Catherine's fourth marriage ended the following year, and the relationship she formed with Sam continued beyond the machinery of publicity. They married on May 1, 1984, his first marriage and her fifth, and welcomed their daughter, Cleo Rose, later that year. Neither arrived without history. Catherine had already lived through several marriages. Sam had spent years learning how to wait without guarantees. Their bond did not depend on pretending the past had never happened. It depended on refusing to turn that past against one another. Sam later described their marriage with characteristic plainness. "We have a common sensibility, but we also work at being together." That single word, work, carried the truth. Love was not something they expected to survive unattended. It required patience, presence, and the willingness to remain when leaving might have been easier. Marriage revealed its character almost immediately. During their honeymoon in Hawaii, Sam was asked to return to Los Angeles to meet director Peter Bogdanovich about Mask, the 1985 drama opposite Cher. He initially declined rather than interrupt the beginning of their life as husband and wife. Catherine understood what the opportunity could mean and called his agent to help restore the meeting. Sam protected the time they had chosen for each other. Catherine protected the future he might have surrendered too quickly. That exchange said more about their partnership than any public declaration could. They later shared the screen in The Shadow Riders, Conager, and The Hero. But their marriage was never turned into a performance. Sam said lasting marriage requires wanting to stay married and working through what would be easier to abandon. More than 4 decades later, that work had endured. He once reduced his private hopes to 2 desires: a movie career and a family. He found both because neither was required to consume the other. Hollywood produced countless love stories. Few lasted long enough to become a life. In a town built on reinvention, Sam and Catherine's rarest achievement was remaining themselves, while building something neither could have sustained alone. Hollywood would soon test that same refusal to surrender the self in a far less tender way. Sam Elliott entered Hollywood, knowing rejection was part of the work. What he did not expect was that some opportunities might depend on what he was willing to surrender. In a 1980 interview carried by the Dayton Daily News, while his career was still uncertain, he spoke openly about the industry practice long hidden behind the phrase, casting couch. Sam said he had received unwanted propositions from both women and men and had refused them. "The cliches are all true," he told interviewer Rex Reed. He did not identify individuals, accuse a particular production, or claim that a specific role had been taken from him. He described an imbalance in which access could be influenced by people whose decisions were rarely explained. "It probably hurt me," Sam said. He could not identify which opportunities, if any, had been lost. That uncertainty carried its own weight. A refusal might shape a career without leaving proof, and silence could make the cost impossible to measure. A clear conscience did not make that uncertainty smaller. Sam drew a line for himself, and later described what remained in 5 words. "My conscience is clear." He said it while his career was still not setting the world on fire, when another opportunity could not be assumed, and professional security remained distant. His decision should not become a standard used against people who faced different risks or possessed fewer choices. The imbalance of power was the wound. Performers often entered those rooms after years of sacrifice, carrying rent, rejection, family expectations, and the fear that one lost opportunity might be the last. Pressure did not always require an explicit threat. A suggestion could be enough. The silence that followed could leave a person questioning what had changed and why. Sam walked away from what he would not accept, but dignity offered no immediate reward. It did not guarantee another role, shorten the waiting, or make an uncertain career feel safer. It only allowed him to keep moving without becoming a stranger to himself. Decades later, public testimony forced Hollywood to confront abuses of authority it had normalized, concealed, or dismissed. Sam welcomed that exposure, saying women in the industry had been mistreated for far too long and describing the new awareness as one of the most important changes Hollywood had seen in years. His response did not begin with a fashionable moment. He had spoken about the same machinery in 1980, when doing so offered little protection and no applause. By then, the unknown actor had become one of the most recognizable figures in American film. Success could not reveal whether any particular opportunity had been affected by those refusals, and Sam never claimed that it could. It only showed that uncertainty had not moved the line he set for himself. The same man who worked to preserve a marriage without erasing either person also protected the self that returned home to it. Hollywood eventually learned Sam Elliott's value. What it never learned was how to purchase it. One unguarded interview accomplished what more than 5 decades in Hollywood had never done. It made Sam Elliott appear unsteady. Audiences had long associated him with restraint. The deliberate cadence, the weathered face, the Western figure who rarely needed more than a glance or a few measured words to command a scene. That image changed in February 2022 when Elliott appeared on Marc Maron's WTF podcast and the conversation turned to Jane Campion's The Power of the Dog. Elliott objected to the film's portrayal of the American West, questioned whether a filmmaker from New Zealand could authentically portray that world, and reacted strongly to its depiction of masculinity and sexuality within the cowboy myth. "I took it personal," he acknowledged. The remarks traveled far beyond a disagreement about filmmaking. Campion publicly rejected his position, describing it as rooted in sexism and a narrow claim over who had the authority to define the West. Benedict Cumberbatch responded more cautiously, but challenged the rigid masculine ideal behind Elliott's criticism, noting that people who did not conform to the traditional image of the heterosexual cowboy had always existed. Viewers who had regarded Elliott as a symbol of quiet judgment heard something harsher in his words. Headlines multiplied, colleagues responded, and an actor known for controlling the emotional temperature of a room suddenly became the subject of one. The microphone preserved a moment in which conviction moved faster than care. Several weeks later, Elliott appeared at a Deadline Contenders television event with no character, costume, or scripted dialogue to protect him. He admitted that the film had struck a deeply personal nerve and that he had failed to express his reaction responsibly. "I didn't articulate it very well," he said. "I said some things that hurt people, and I feel terrible about that." Elliott apologized to the gay community, the film's cast, and especially Benedict Cumberbatch. He also reaffirmed his respect for Jane Campion, calling her a brilliant director. "Brilliant actors all," he said of the performers. "And I can only say I'm sorry, and I am." He did not argue that his intention should erase the effect of his language. He did not demand forgiveness or portray himself as the victim of public misunderstanding. The apology could not erase the original remarks or decide how others should feel. It could only require him to face the consequence without retreating. For a man whose screen identity had been built around certainty, the admission carried more weight than another defense. The microphone had revealed the mistake. The stage revealed his willingness to name it. Only months before the internet tried to write Sam Elliott's ending, his peers had given him one of the most meaningful recognitions of his career. In 1883, Elliott played Shea Brennan, a frontier guide carrying immense grief, as he led a group of emigrants west across the Great Plains. The role did not merely ask him to repeat the familiar image of the weathered cowboy. Shea's authority was shaped by loss, responsibility, and the knowledge that survival could demand more than strength alone. Elliott carried that burden without turning grief into spectacle. A lowered gaze, a pause before speaking, or the exhaustion in his posture often revealed more than dialogue could explain. At the Screen Actors Guild Awards in February 2023, the performance earned Elliott his first SAG victory for outstanding performance by a male actor in a television movie or limited series. Standing before a room of fellow performers, he called it the most meaningful acknowledgement of my 55-year career. He said he would treasure the award as a reminder of 1883 and the gift the production had been to those who made it. The recognition mattered because it came from other actors, people who understood the years of waiting, preparation, rejection, and quiet work hidden behind a finished performance. Grief outran truth 6 months later, in August 2023. Online videos and posts began announcing that Sam Elliott had passed away, using memorial-style photographs, fabricated farewell language, and titles designed to resemble urgent news. The claims spread during the week of Elliott's 79th birthday, turning a living man's milestone into the raw material for a counterfeit obituary. Concern moved quickly through fan communities as people searched for confirmation and repeated the reports before reliable evidence could catch up. Yet no credible source verified the claim. Fact-checkers traced the rumor to channels that had repeatedly manufactured similar reports about other public figures, often recycling familiar scripts and changing only the name and photograph. The timing made the deception especially cruel. Only months after his fellow actors had honored more than 5 decades of work, misleading videos were attempting to compress that career into a false farewell. There was no confirmed loss and no final statement, only a familiar face being used to make sorrow arrive before scrutiny. Reality returned without the dramatic timing the false story had promised. Elliott did not step onto the set of Landman only weeks after the rumor, as some later retellings suggested. Nearly 2 years passed before Paramount Plus announced, in April 2025, that he would join the second season of Taylor Sheridan's drama as a series regular. When the season premiered that November, Elliott appeared as T.L. Norris, the aging father of Billy Bob Thornton's Tommy Norris. At 81, he was not being placed at the edge of the frame as a ceremonial legend. The role placed him inside a story of regret, physical decline, family damage, and the difficult distance between a father and son. Elliott remained the same complicated human being who had spoken without enough care, apologized publicly, received the most meaningful recognition of his long career, and then found his name attached to a false ending he had never written. His answer was not a declaration, it was work. Age did not reach Sam Elliott as a headline. It reached him inside a scene. In Landman, T.L. Norris falls into a swimming pool and discovers that his worn knees and hip will not lift him back out. The moment belongs to fiction, but Elliott later said the scene was very close to where he stood physically, not mentally, but physically. He explained, "I've been an athlete all my life, and I've been a laborer all my life, and I'm paying for it now. The context matters." He was not revealing a secret diagnosis or describing a collapse of spirit. He was acknowledging what decades of sport, construction work, writing, and physical performance had asked of his body. For years, Audiences had watched that tall frame represent steadiness, command, and endurance. Now the same body was being used to reveal dependence. TL remains mentally alert while his body refuses an ordinary command, and the man who once filled a frame simply by standing must wait for his son to help him rise. The scene ends not with a heroic recovery, but with an embrace between a father and son who had spent years carrying distance between them. Age becomes painful not through spectacle, but through recognition. The mind still knows what it wants, while the body can no longer complete every task alone. Elliott allows a proud man to accept help without surrendering his dignity. Tenderness gives the private side of that life its clearest shape. Sam once described walking the Malibu shore with his daughter Cleo, searching for stones, saying, "I just really love being with Cleo. It doesn't really matter what we're doing." In March 26, he appeared beside Catherine Ross at the Actor Awards, more than 4 decades after they married, while the Landman ensemble stood among the year's drama nominees. Those moments do not suggest that time has spared him. They show that his life remains inhabited by a wife who has shared more than 40 years with him, by a daughter whose company needs no occasion, and by work that still asks something truthful of him. Even after nearly 6 decades on camera, Sam has spoken of continuing to learn from Billy Bob Thornton, the actor playing his son. Recognition did not convince him that he had finished growing. The cowboy image has not disappeared. It has opened just enough for the audience to see the older man inside it, physically worn, emotionally present, and still willing to learn after recognition has already arrived. At 81, Sam Elliott still has work ahead of him, but none of it can be treated as unlimited. Landman completed its 2nd season in January 2026, after the premiere drew more than 9.2 million views in its first 2 days, making it the most-watched debut for a Paramount Plus original series. The drama has been renewed for a 3rd season, although, as of August 3, 2026, the complete returning cast had not been formally announced. Elliott is also attached to the live-action film Grendel as the Dragon, alongside Jeff Bridges, Dave Bautista, Bryan Cranston, and Thomasin McKenzie, with no confirmed release date. The contrast between those projects reflects the unusual range of his later career. Landman strips the familiar image down to human frailty. Grendel transforms the voice and presence audiences know into something mythic. Neither requires viewers to pretend he is unchanged. Both suggest that age can give an actor access to truths youth could not yet carry. Legacy is no longer a list of cowboys, soldiers, brothers, and fathers. It is the trust created by the way Sam played them, and by the life that gave those performances weight. From Mask and Tombstone to The Big Lebowski, A Star is Born, 1883, and Landman, he became memorable without confusing stillness with emptiness or masculinity with emotional silence. He waited through anonymity, built a marriage without turning it into publicity, protected his conscience when refusal may have carried a cost, and accepted responsibility when his own words caused pain. In later years, his image of strength became more honest because he allowed it to bend. Needing help did not make TL less dignified. It made the performance more human. Continuing to learn did not diminish Elliott's stature. It revealed the humility beneath it. His later work offers no fantasy that strength remains unchanged forever. It suggests something quieter and more useful. Character can remain even when strength changes form. Kayla Wallace recalled that Elliott would arrive early to the Landman, set even when he was not needed in a scene, and remain nearby while the other actors worked. He would find a bench, an apple box, or whatever place was available. Content simply to stay close and watch the work continue. There was no announcement in that gesture and no performance for the public. If his story brings back someone who kept showing up despite the years, leave that person's name or one memory below. The finest tribute is remembrance. Long after false headlines had tried to write his ending, Sam Elliott was still arriving early, finding a place near the set, and remaining there while the work continued around him.